All right.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys.
That was awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Do you find it a little exhausting after you finished a piece of art like
No,
this?
I have an adrenaline buzz that lasts for a while, and then I crash. And then they got to scrape me up and ply me with adult beverages or something like that.
Is it different working with a symphony? I mean, you've apparently not done this very often. Tell me about that.
Working with a symphony, this of course is my first event with a symphony, and there's with any live music, there's an electricity, there's a vibe, it's like playing your instrument by yourself or playing with a band, and so there's always that energy that makes it just a whole lot more fun and more enthusiastic and more of a thrill and more of a challenge too.
That's what I was wondering about. Tell me a bit about the challenge of it. What makes it different than, let's say, working with recorded music?
Part of the benefit of recorded music is you get exactly the same tempo every single time. A symphony, even if they were very gracious and sent me a clip of the Prague Orchestra playing it. They played it at just a little bit faster tempo, and so you sort of have to adjust to that.
So I think what's really interesting, and obviously your art, I mean, the art of what you do and how you got into it is very interesting, but also I think the storytelling factor. I mean, you've become a storyteller. You have 12 minutes. I don't know if you've listened to classical music before or were into it, but can you elaborate a little bit on what the storytelling process is like of taking a piece of music or someone coming to you and commissioning a piece, and how do you even begin to write the story? And I think that's very interesting.
Being able to get a story into the sand art is something that is helped by the fact that my artwork has always involved storytelling. And so even my pencil drawings as a kid and my pen and ink drawings later on all have stories woven into them. When the sand art came along, obviously I wanted to be able to tell stories. It's a whole lot easier with the sand because you can morph one image into the next. And then you can tell just any kind of story you want to tell. What I like to do is incorporate the music into the story. So you have the challenge of picking out the music and then building the story around that. Obviously, starting with a classical piece that already is put together, then you have to just listen to it over and over again until the images start to surface. Well, the Moldau was a perfect piece because it starts out with the stream and then the country dance, and all I did was add a little bit of romance, you know, the guy and the girl and the storm, and he goes off on the ship and the ship sinks and then, you know, he's rescued. So it was a perfect piece. Some classical pieces might be a little more difficult to do that with, but this one was easy.
Perfect. So it more so starts with you just kind of listening and kind of letting it come to you and kind of analyzing the story. And is there any, at some point, I don't know if this is an odd question, but I know you orchestrate the piece and you tell the story, but is there any sort of improvisation and kind of like a free form that you begin and you get in there and it just, now I'm going here in this direction?
Absolutely. When I first started with the sand story, I tried to make it like the pen and ink drawings that I'd worked on before. Pen and ink is a very controlled medium. You can draw very fine lines and you can put them exactly where you want them. You can do a preliminary sketch, and so you get it all exactly the way you want it. The sand is very freeform. When I first started with the sand, it was very frustrating because the sand doesn't always cooperate the same way. And so it's been, I guess, 8 years now that I've been working with it. And what I've discovered is that there are times when you just don't have enough sand in one location, you have to sprinkle more on, it sends your timing off, or it just doesn't look right. And so you've got to adapt. And it's very much like playing an instrument long enough so that you can then improvise a little bit, you sense what the other musician's going to do, and you kind of work with them, and it's become a whole lot more fun.
Excellent. Where do you see kind of the future of sand art going, and where do you see yourself? What's next for you? Kind of, what do you see that, is this going to be an industry? Is this something that's going to catch on, or?
It's obviously too compelling an art form for it to remain so small. And there are already sand artists popping up in various places on the world. You can find them on the internet. And so probably by this time next year there'll be a sand artist on every corner, and I'll have to come up with something new and different.
And so when you started, I can just see you kind of experimenting in the garage. Is this where it started? You just built the light box and built the table and said, I'm going to try it out now. Did you have any experience with sand before, or was this just...
Other than building sand castles on the beach, no. So the sand was a brand new art form. My wife says I was like a mad scientist out in the garage cobbling this together, and duct taped a handy cam to a tripod and experimented with it, and so it was all brand new. But 5 years ago, my clips hit YouTube, and then the phone started ringing, and so that's all we're doing now, full time.
And you've been all around the world.
Yeah, I think the best of my calculation, we've been in about 39 states and 17 or 18 foreign countries.
Is there any particular performance other than the performance with Virginia Symphony that specifically sticks out to you, that was very special, memorable to you?
During Ramadan, King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia was inaugurating his new university, Kaust University, and it was just north of Jeddah. And so they invited us to come and tell the story of Kaust. And so performing for the king and his entourage, and just a whole raft of people in Saudi Arabia, was undoubtedly one of my most memorable performances.
It's a very impermanent art form. Is that frustrating, or is that liberating, or is it a bit of both? Describe.
It's really a bit of both, because having done so much artwork that was very tight, the sand art having to be much looser, I really, before I take a picture, before I would want to preserve it, I'd want to go back and tinker with it, and try and straighten everything up and get it all looking right. So really the only way of preserving it is with video or photograph. And then I sweep up all my sand and I put it in my little Tupperware container, and I have to get it through airport security, which is a challenge.
Excellent.
Excellent.
That'll do. Yeah,
Personal
that's
question,
great.
the beret.
The beret,
You've got quite an image going for yourself here, and I love it.
Nick is on.
there's
I'm a hat man.
He is.
There's
Nick's
a-
a hat man. So
there's
he's
a
good.
real practical reason for the beret. I never wore a beret before I started the sand art, but then I discovered that sometimes when I had to lean in to reach across the table, my head would get into the camera. And I'm a little bit follically challenged up top here, and so it wound up looking a little bit like a lunar landscape or a Martian landscape with a few dead trees on it, which was not pretty. So my son suggested wearing a golf cap backwards, but it kept slipping down, and so I tried a beret, and it stuck, and now it's become part of the brand, so to speak.
Joe Castillo, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.